That night at the corporate gala changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage and about myself. Emma, my wife, had been invited to a high-profile pharmaceutical awards ceremony in downtown Chicago. I was proud of her. She'd worked hard, made a name for herself in research. I'd been running my own company, a logistics optimization firm I'd built from scratch, one that now brought in 7 figures annually. We were both successful in our own ways. At least I thought we were equals. But the second we walked into that glittering ballroom, surrounded by polished professionals in designer suits and crystal glasses clinking under chandeliers, something in her changed. She wasn't my Emma anymore. She was Dr. Emma, the brilliant researcher desperate to shine in front of her peers. Her eyes lit up when she spotted her colleagues gathered near the bar. "Oh, there's my research group," she said, her tone suddenly excited, her hand already half lifting in a wave. Then she turned to me with a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just try to blend in tonight, okay?" I should have caught the warning right there, but I was still naive enough to think she was being thoughtful. The first real sting came fast. She introduced me to Dr. Peterson, her team's lead researcher. "This is Jason, just my husband," she said with a casual wave. "Just my husband." Then she immediately shifted the spotlight back to Peterson, going on and on about his groundbreaking work on protein synthesis inhibitors. When Dr. Peterson turned to me, trying to be polite, and asked what I did, Emma didn't even let me answer. "Oh, Jason runs some logistics thing," she cut in lightly. Not exactly thrilling dinner conversation. Then she laughed. The kind of laugh that's meant for an audience, not for you. I stood there smiling like an idiot while the conversation swirled around me, my chest tight with embarrassment. Peterson gave me that half-sympathetic nod people give when they can sense a social imbalance but don't know what to do about it. And that's how the night went, over and over again. "This is Dr. Martinez. She's revolutionizing cancer treatment. And this is my husband." Every time, the same contrast, glowing praise for them, a dismissive afterthought for me. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was an accessory, background noise. I found myself running small errands, fetching drinks, standing quietly, nodding at conversations I could have easily contributed to. Ironically, they started discussing issues in pharmaceutical distribution, an area where my company had deep expertise. I could have offered solutions in seconds, but Emma never opened the door for me to speak. Then came the moment that truly broke me. Dr. Williams mentioned their facility was struggling with inventory management, exactly the kind of challenge my firm solves daily. I started to chime in, sharing a few strategies I'd implemented for clients with similar problems. Before I could finish, Emma's voice sliced through mine. "Jason, could you grab me another white wine?" The Sauvignon Blanc, not the Chardonnay. She didn't even look at me, just turned her back and continued her conversation with Williams like I'd never spoken. Dr. Williams froze, clearly uncomfortable, glancing between us as if wondering what he'd just witnessed. I forced a smile, nodded, and walked toward the bar, every step heavier than the last. The bartender, a young guy with sleeves rolled up, took one look at me and said quietly, "Rough night?" I laughed under my breath. "Something like that." When I brought Emma her drink, she didn't even glance up, just took the glass mid-sentence and kept talking about grant funding. Her face was glowing. That spark I hadn't seen in months. But it wasn't for me. It was for them. For this world she clearly valued more than ours. As I stood there, invisible beside her, I realized something painful. The woman I loved didn't see me anymore. Not as her equal. Maybe not even as her partner. That's when Dr. Victoria Kane entered the ballroom and the entire energy shifted. Victoria was the kind of woman whose presence filled a room before she said a word. Impeccably dressed, early 40s maybe, confident in a way that turned heads without trying. She wasn't part of the research team. She was the team's boss. The newly appointed vice president of operations, the one everyone secretly wanted to impress. And I instantly understood why Emma had been so tense about this event. The moment Victoria approached, Emma straightened up, her voice changing to that overly sweet, eager tone I'd never heard before. "Dr. Kane, I'm so glad you made it. We're honored you could come." Victoria smiled, poised, polite, and sharp. Her eyes swept over our little group, taking in the dynamics like someone who'd spent her career reading rooms full of hidden egos. It's a lovely event, Emma, she said smoothly. I've been looking forward to meeting the people behind our recent successes. Then her gaze landed on me, and unlike everyone else that night, she didn't look past me. And you must be Jason, she said. Emma mentions you occasionally. That word, occasionally, carried more weight than it should have. It told me everything I needed to know about how rarely I came up in Emma's world. Emma let out a brittle laugh. Yes, that's my husband. He does logistics work. But Victoria didn't turn away. She stepped closer, extending her hand, her tone shifting to genuine curiosity. Logistics optimization, if I recall correctly? You work with pharmaceutical and medical device supply chains? I blinked, surprised. Emma must have mentioned me once. I shook Victoria's hand, feeling the firm grip of someone who takes people seriously. That's right, I said. I specialize in optimizing distribution networks for healthcare clients. Victoria's eyes lit up with recognition. Fascinating. We've actually been having issues with efficiency at our manufacturing sites. Maybe we should talk sometime. Emma froze. For the first time that night, she looked unsettled. And as I stood there, her boss's hand still in mine, I realized something I hadn't all evening. I'd spent years believing I wasn't enough for Emma's world. But maybe, just maybe, it wasn't my worth that was the problem. Maybe I'd just been standing beside the wrong woman. Victoria leaned in, her tone shifting just slightly. Actually, there's a lot of overlap with your industry. I caught the look in Emma's eyes, that quick flicker of surprise. Like she just realized she didn't actually know what I did for a living beyond the vague word logistics. For the first time all night, I was the one who had her boss's full attention. Victoria's expression sharpened with genuine interest. We've been having some serious distribution inefficiencies in our Midwest operations. Our current partners don't seem to see the bigger picture when it comes to optimization. I could practically feel the tension rolling off Emma beside me, but for once I didn't shrink under it. I started talking, really talking, about the systems I'd built, the optimization frameworks I'd implemented, the cost-saving strategies that had helped other pharmaceutical clients fix exactly those problems. And Victoria listened. Not politely, not out of obligation, but with the focus of someone who understood exactly how much money the right logistics plan could save. Her eyes stayed locked on mine as I explained the numbers, the flow models, the real results. Those are precisely the kind of solutions we need, she said finally, her voice carrying the weight of someone used to signing million-dollar contracts. Your approach to minimizing waste while staying compliant? That's impressive. Emma tried to pull the conversation back toward her research, but Victoria wasn't done. She kept asking about implementation timelines, measurable outcomes, the strategies I used to manage risk and cost. For the first time all evening, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't just her husband. I was being seen and by someone who mattered. Then came the line that landed like a thunderclap. Jason clearly knows his field, Victoria said, glancing meaningfully at Emma. I'm curious why his expertise never came up in our operations meetings, especially when logistics challenges are a regular topic. Silence. You could have heard the air conditioning hum. Emma's face flushed crimson. I just didn't want to seem like I was pushing my husband's business, she stammered. It sounded weak even to her own ears, especially coming from someone who'd spent the entire night advertising everyone else's success. Victoria's smile was razor-sharp. How thoughtful of you, she said. So modest about your husband's qualifications. The way she emphasized modest told everyone exactly what she meant. The crowd around us felt it too. Emma's discomfort wasn't just visible anymore, it was palpable. 20 minutes later, I was on the hotel's rooftop garden, staring out at the Chicago skyline. The city glittered below, a constellation of lights against glass towers, and I was nursing a scotch, trying to make sense of it all. How my wife had spent an entire evening pretending I didn't exist. I didn't hear the footsteps at first, just the soft click of heels on stone. I turned and saw Victoria walking toward me, 2 glasses of wine in hand, her expression softer now. I hoped I might find you up here, she said, offering me one. You looked like you could use some air after that performance downstairs. I took the glass, unsure how to answer. Emma's just protective of her image, I said finally. It's a big night for her department. Victoria let out a low laugh, but it wasn't amused. Jason, I've been watching this dynamic for months. Emma's behavior patterns at the office, they're telling. She talks about everyone in her life except you. Her words hit harder than I expected. She mentions her colleagues' spouses all the time, Victoria continued, settling gracefully into a chair across from me. Dr. Peterson's husband and his law firm, Dr. Martinez's wife and her art gallery. Even the lab tech's boyfriend getting a promotion. But you? She shook her head. Whenever someone asks about you, she changes the subject, or gives vague answers like she's embarrassed. I felt something cold settle deep in my chest. The confirmation of something I'd been feeling for months, but never wanted to say out loud. She'd been erasing me, quietly, piece by piece. I noticed how she interrupted you tonight when Dr. Williams brought up inventory issues, Victoria said. Those problems have cost us hundreds of thousands this year. You clearly had insight, real, practical solutions, but she shut you down, like you were an inconvenience at a family dinner. That line hit home, because that's exactly what it felt like, being managed, contained, reduced. Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out a sleek, cream-colored card, not the generic corporate ones from downstairs. This one was heavier, personal. She handed it to me. I have a proposition for you, she said quietly. I turned the card in my hand, feeling the weight of the paper. What kind of proposition? Her gaze met mine, direct, unwavering. My company needs a logistics consultant who actually understands pharmaceutical distribution. The contract I'm offering would pay more than your current annual revenue, and it would put you in direct collaboration with executive leadership, not middle management. Her tone was professional, but the air between us shifted, just slightly, to something that wasn't. And personally? I asked before I could stop myself. Victoria's lips curved into the faintest smile, the first real one I'd seen from her all night. Personally, she said, I think it's refreshing to meet a man who's built something substantial on his own, without needing to tear anyone else down to feel accomplished. Your wife doesn't seem to understand how rare that is? The words hung in the cool night air, unspoken tension stretching between us like a live wire. Victoria, I said quietly, I'm married. She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping to something softer, something that felt more dangerous than anything she'd said so far. Are you, though? Really? Her eyes searched mine. Because from where I'm sitting, you look like a man who's been made to feel invisible in his own home. Her hand came to rest lightly on my forearm. Successful women don't fear successful men, Jason. We recognize them. And in that moment, standing beneath the city lights, my wife somewhere downstairs pretending I didn't exist, I realized for the first time in years someone was actually seeing me. There was something magnetic about her. The way Victoria's manicured fingers rested against my jacket sent a spark through me, a kind of attraction I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about looks, though she was stunning. It was the feeling of being truly seen by someone powerful, someone who valued ambition instead of shrinking from it. My husband used to make me feel small, she said softly. Little jabs about my schedule, my salary, always pretending it was out of concern. And with every word, I felt her story mirroring mine. Emma's constant digs, her embarrassment whenever I showed up in her professional circles, the way she'd slowly erased me from the life she shared with everyone else. What are you suggesting? I asked, but I already knew. Victoria's thumb traced a lazy circle on my wrist. That life's too short to spend it with someone who sees your success as a threat, she said. You deserve better, and I'd be lying if I said that's all I'm offering. Before I could find the right words, a sharp gasp cut through the air. I turned, and there was Emma standing at the garden's edge. Pale, frozen, her eyes locked on Victoria's hand still resting on mine. For a moment, the world stopped. Then, like a storm breaking open, Emma moved, fury radiating from her with every step. The click of her heels against the stone was like gunfire. "Get your hands off my husband!" she shouted, her voice slicing through the rooftop chatter. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. Victoria stood slowly, calm and composed, like someone who'd been through boardroom wars and never lost her cool. But Emma wasn't done. "This is completely inappropriate," she snapped, her voice rising higher. You're sexually harassing my husband at a company event." The words hit like an explosion, and in that moment, Emma's entire career began to crumble. The crowd went silent. Phones came out. Every eye on the terrace was on her now. Victoria blinked once, then spoke in the calm, surgical tone of someone who'd already won. "I think everyone here witnessed a professional conversation," she said evenly. But Emma only grew louder, fueled by jealousy and panic. "You think I didn't see how you were touching him?" Whispering to him like some desperate cougar. The gasp from the crowd was audible. Even I froze, realizing Emma had crossed a line she could never come back from. Victoria's smile didn't waver. "You're free to report anything you like," she said coolly, gesturing toward the security cameras. "I'm confident the footage will show exactly what happened." And that was the moment Emma realized what she'd done, accusing a vice president of sexual harassment in front of witnesses and cameras that would prove her wrong. But she couldn't stop. Rage had taken the wheel. "You think you can steal my husband just because you're rich and powerful?" she screamed. "You're pathetic!" People began to step back, uncomfortable, whispering. Even her closest colleagues looked away. Dr. Peterson shook his head. Dr. Martinez pretended not to know her. "Emma, stop," I said quietly, but it was too late. Her voice carried across the terrace, desperate and shaking. "Everyone needs to know what kind of predator she is." Victoria's response was ice cold, delivered with perfect precision. "You should stop talking before you say something that ends your career," she said. "Because I promise you, HR will want to see this footage." And just like that, the fire drained from Emma's face. The reality of it all hit her like a wave. Her reputation, her job, her carefully constructed image, gone in a single public meltdown. What had started as a simple rooftop event had just turned into the night Emma destroyed her own career, and I was standing right in the middle of it. But the damage was already done and spreading fast. Within hours, clips of Emma's rooftop meltdown were everywhere, bouncing across social media with captions like "Office Scandal of the Year" and "When HR Meets Drama." I watched, in real time, as my wife realized she'd just committed professional suicide, all while trying to protect a marriage she'd been slowly dismantling for years. For a second, I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered how she'd spent the whole evening treating me like a prop she wished she could have left at home. The drive back was 45 minutes of silence, punctuated by the sound of Emma's frantic voice as she tried to patch up her career over the phone. I just sat there watching her life unravel mile by mile. Her hands trembled as she dialed number after number. Colleagues, HR, mentors, anyone who might still answer. But every call ended the same way, a hollow pause, a forced apology, and then that heavy silence that said it all. "Dr. Peterson, you know I'm not usually like this," she pleaded into the phone, her voice breaking. "It was just a misunderstanding." Even from the passenger seat, I could hear the discomfort in his reply. The videos were already everywhere, he said. Colleagues were concerned about her judgment, about her emotional stability. And that was it. The sound of her career collapsing under the weight of her own choices. By the time we reached home, the damage had only gotten worse. Her department head called. She was being placed on administrative leave pending an investigation. Then came the emails, the HR messages, the polite but devastating statements of disappointment from co-workers who didn't want to be caught in the blast radius. "Administrative leave?" she whispered, stunned. "For how long?" No one gave her a straight answer. And that silence said everything. As she hung up, her mentor's name flashed across the screen, a last, desperate lifeline. Emma begged for advice, for some way to spin what had happened, to undo the accusation she'd hurled at a vice president in front of witnesses. But there was no coming back. By the time she ended that call, even she knew it. When we pulled into the driveway, Emma was pale and shaking. The confident professional everyone once respected had been replaced by someone terrified and lost. She turned to me the moment we stepped inside, her voice cracking. "Jason, you have to help me," she said. "Victoria likes you. Maybe you could talk to her? Tell her I didn't mean it, that it was jealousy, not malice." The irony almost made me laugh. For years, she'd treated me like an afterthought, an accessory that didn't fit her professional image. and now she was begging me to use the very connection she'd once mocked to save her. "Help you how exactly?" I asked. "Tell her I respect her," she said, pacing the living room like a trapped animal. That I was just emotional. I'd never intentionally undermine her authority. I just sat on the couch and watched her unravel. Really looked at her. Not as my wife, but as a woman who'd built her entire identity around being in control, now reduced to begging the husband she'd belittled for years. "Emma," I said quietly, "you accused a vice president of sexual harassment. In front of witnesses, on camera. You called her a cougar and a predator. You could have destroyed her career if there wasn't proof that you lied." She stared at me, eyes glossy and lost. "I was just protecting our marriage," she whispered. Any wife would react that way. "Protecting our marriage?" I repeated, my voice low. "When was the last time you protected anything about our marriage, Emma? When was the last time you introduced me as more than just your husband? When was the last time you were proud of me?" The questions hung there like smoke, and for the first time I saw the realization hit her, that she wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was asking for rescue. From consequences she'd earned all by herself. 3 days later, I was standing in Victoria's office overlooking downtown Chicago. Officially, it was to discuss the consulting contract she'd mentioned, but we both knew there was more beneath the surface. The place looked exactly how I imagined her world to be. Floor-to-ceiling windows, sleek furniture, quiet power in every corner. Victoria moved through the space like someone born to lead, her navy blue suit tailored perfectly to her frame, her confidence almost magnetic. "I'm glad you called," she said, gesturing toward a seat across her mahogany desk. "After Saturday night, I wasn't sure you'd still be interested in talking business." I sat down, taking in the view, the skyline, the calm, the quiet authority. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged somewhere that didn't require me to shrink to fit. "The consulting offer still interests me," I said. "What happened that night doesn't change that." Victoria smiled faintly, sliding a folder across the desk, thick with contracts and projections. "Good," she said, "because what I'm offering is substantial." And in that moment, I realized something. Emma had spent years trying to make me feel small, but sitting there across from Victoria, I'd never felt larger. Victoria didn't waste time. "We're talking about a 3-year exclusive contract," she said, her voice calm but deliberate. "Full overhaul of our entire Midwest distribution network, with performance bonuses that could easily double your current annual income." She slid a stack of documents across the desk, and as I flipped through the pages, I saw numbers that didn't even seem real. It wasn't just a contract. It was a career-defining opportunity. 17 facilities, advanced logistics systems, partnerships that could reshape an entire industry. "This is incredible," I said, scanning the proposal. "But I have to ask, is this business or something else?" Victoria leaned back, her expression softening. "Jason, I don't mix business with personal feelings," she said, then paused, just long enough to make the air feel charged. "This deal exists because we need results, and you can deliver them. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't hoping it might also give us a chance to work closely together." The honesty hit like a breath of fresh air. After years of Emma's passive-aggressive remarks and quiet disapproval, Victoria's clarity felt almost dangerous. "What kind of opportunities?" I asked. She stood circling the desk with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was and what she wanted. When she stopped in front of me, the air between us tightened. Her perfume was subtle but intoxicating. "The kind where we build something together," she said, her tone lowering. "Where your intelligence is valued, not tolerated. Where your success doesn't threaten mine, it enhances it." Her hand came to rest on my shoulder. The same gesture that once set Emma off, but this time there were no witnesses, just us. "Emma doesn't deserve you, Jason," she said softly. "She made you smaller so she could feel bigger. That's not love. That's fear." Her words struck deeper than I wanted to admit. For years, I'd lived under that quiet suffocation, that subtle erosion of self. And now, someone was finally saying it out loud. "Victoria," I said, my voice unsteady. "This is moving fast." She smiled. That kind of knowing, confident smile that made you forget the word hesitation. Or maybe, she said, leaning closer, you've just been standing still for so long that forward motion feels unfamiliar. Her hand traced the line of my jaw, her voice dipping lower. I know what I want, Jason. A partner who builds, not competes. Who creates. Who's capable of standing beside me, not behind me. It wasn't just desire in her eyes. It was recognition. And in that moment, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. What about Emma? I finally asked. The investigation. Her career. Victoria's smile didn't falter. It just turned sharper. Emma made her choices, she said simply. The company will conclude she made false accusations, displayed unprofessional behavior, and proved herself unfit for her role. Actions have consequences. Her tone was calm, clinical even, but the message was final. Emma's career was over, and for the first time I didn't feel angry or sad, just detached. Then Victoria's fingers slid to the back of my neck, playing with my hair, sending a chill through me. Imagine what we could build together, she murmured. A business partnership that changes the game, and a relationship between equals. She leaned in until her lips hovered inches from mine. I have a penthouse 20 minutes from here. We could continue this conversation somewhere more private. Discuss the finer points of our potential partnership. The invitation was unmistakable, and I knew whatever I chose in that moment would rewrite the rest of my life. Stay loyal to a woman who'd spent years making me feel invisible, or step into something that felt like possibility itself. 6 months later, I was standing beside Victoria at the annual Pharmaceutical Innovation Summit in Boston. The man in the mirror looked different now, confident, sharp, wearing a tailored suit that actually fit like it was meant for him. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria said, her voice carrying through the room, this is Jason Mitchell, the logistics genius who saved our company over $12 million this year. Her hand rested proudly on my arm, the same gesture that once set off Emma's rage. Only now it symbolized everything that had changed. Where Emma once introduced me as my husband with a tone of quiet apology, Victoria introduced me as a partner. Someone she was proud of. Someone who mattered. My consulting firm had tripled in size since that night. We'd expanded into biotech, medical devices, fields I'd only dreamed of touching before. The contract she offered wasn't a favor. It was the foundation of something much bigger. And living with Victoria these past 3 months, it felt like I'd been breathing oxygen after years underwater. She didn't just celebrate my wins, she understood them. Asked about my work, listened, pushed me to think bigger. At dinner with investors, she'd turn to me mid-conversation and say, "The Portland expansion? That's all Jason." His approach to inventory staging saved us 3 months and millions in overhead. And I'd smile, not out of pride, but disbelief, that after years of being diminished, I'd finally found someone who saw me exactly as I was, capable, valuable, equal. Sometimes I still catch myself wondering how my life flipped so completely. A year ago, I was a man shrinking in the shadow of someone who couldn't stand to see me grow. Now I stand beside Victoria, at conferences, in boardrooms, and in rooms filled with the kind of people who used to overlook me, and she looks at me like I belong there. At the annual Pharmaceutical Innovation Summit in Boston, the lights were low and the air buzzed with the sound of quiet deals being made. Victoria stood at the center of it all, confident and radiant, the kind of woman who commands a room without even trying. When she introduced me as Jason Mitchell, the logistics genius who revolutionized our distribution network and saved us over $12 million this year, I swear time slowed down for a second. Her hand rested proudly on my arm, the same gesture that once sent my ex-wife spiraling, but this time it wasn't an act of control. It was pride. Real, unfiltered pride. And that simple difference changed everything. Where Emma used to downplay me, introducing me as just my husband with a half apology, Victoria lifts me up like my achievements are something worth celebrating. Working beside her didn't just grow my career, it rebuilt my confidence from the ground up. My consulting firm has tripled in size since that first contract. We've expanded into biotech logistics and medical device distribution, and suddenly, I'm the guy executives call when they want innovation. The contract Victoria offered wasn't a favor. It was the spark that ignited the version of me I always knew was buried under years of someone else's insecurity. Victoria and I moved in together 3 months ago, and for the first time, home feels like a place of momentum instead of tension. She doesn't just ask about my projects, she dives in. She challenges my ideas, offers insights, celebrates breakthroughs like they're her own. Every conversation feels like building something together, not competing to be heard. At investor dinners, she looks across the table and says, "The Portland expansion is ahead of schedule because of Jason's innovative staging model. His process is becoming the blueprint for our entire West Coast operation." And I find myself sitting a little taller, speaking a little louder, no longer the man who apologizes for taking up space, but someone who knows exactly what he brings to the table. Meanwhile, Emma's story went in a very different direction. Our divorce was finalized last month. The settlement leaned in my favor, partly because of the success I built after she was gone, and partly because she couldn't escape the shadow of her own choices. Her career never recovered after the harassment scandal. She was reassigned to a small research facility in Wisconsin, a far cry from the high-profile labs where she once bragged about her potential. I heard through colleagues that she still asks about me. Does Jason ever talk about me? She apparently asked Dr. Peterson at a conference. He told me she keeps insisting she made one mistake that ruined everything. But that's the thing, it wasn't one mistake. It was years of belittling, controlling, and slowly eroding the person I was until there was almost nothing left. I don't hate her. I don't even feel angry anymore. Just a kind of distant sympathy for someone who had everything and threw it away because she couldn't stand to see someone else shine beside her. Victoria and I are announcing our engagement at next month's gala, the same event where Emma humiliated us both exactly 1 year ago. The symmetry feels poetic, like the universe decided to close the loop in perfect balance. Last night, while we reviewed the guest list on our penthouse balcony overlooking the city, Victoria asked softly, "Are you nervous about seeing them again?" Her colleagues? I looked out at the skyline, lights stretching endlessly across the horizon, and told her the truth. Not nervous, grateful. Because if that night hadn't happened, I might still be living small, still trying to prove my worth to someone who could never see it. She smiled, that confident, knowing smile that always feels like sunlight breaking through fog. Then she kissed me, slow, certain, and whispered, "Their loss is definitely my gain." And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't someone's burden anymore. I was someone's choice, someone's pride. A couple of weeks ago, Emma reached out on LinkedIn, something about closure, about understanding what went wrong. I deleted it without replying. Because some chapters aren't meant to be reopened. Some stories deserve to stay finished. Now, my life isn't about surviving someone else's storm. It's about building something that lasts. Tomorrow, Victoria and I announce our expansion into European markets. She'll introduce me as the strategic mind behind our growth, and I'll smile, not out of ego but gratitude. Because for the first time, I'm standing exactly where I belong, beside someone who never doubted my potential. And every success, every deal, every headline feels like proof that sometimes losing what you thought you needed is the only way to make room for what you truly deserve.